Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you're watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. Towards the end of the game, we can choose through various side quests, one for each character, and so this video is going to be covering Magus' side quest, in which we go to Ozzie's fort. So if you speak with him here in the End of Time, after you have saved Chrono, then Magus will say that he has heard that he wonders what Ozzie is up to, and he's heard that Ozzie has a fort that is somewhere in the Middle Ages. So, real quick before we do that though, I am going to go to Medina Village in 1000 AD, because I find it kind of fun to speak with this particular fiend right here, who explains that he's surprised that Magus has magic, because no humans were supposed to have that. As a reminder, for those of you who don't remember from earlier in the game, if you speak with most of the fiends here in Medina Village, they don't like humans, and in fact the shopkeeper has exorbitant prices for any humans, so that we're not able to buy anything for good prices. I wonder what would happen if Robo was the one trying to buy stuff and everybody else wasn't here. I wonder what would happen at that point. If you head to Medina Square, you can also see that there is no longer a statue of Magus here, but instead there's a statue of Ozzie, and this is because Magus lost the fight against Frog in his castle here in 600 AD. So we're in 1000 AD right now, so history remembers Ozzie as being the leader of the fiends. One other thing I think is interesting to point out is the fact that some of the dialogue has changed a little bit because now the Black Omen is in the sky, and apparently the fiends worship it or something, so that's a disturbing realization. It's such a weird thing, like, I suppose it makes sense if it's there all the time and it's, like, bad stuff. I don't know. Of course it makes sense that the bad guys would be happy about it, I suppose. But anyway, continuing on. Next we're going to Ozzie's fort, which is in the continent right in the middle of the world map. So it's real close to the Black Omen itself, but just go to park the Epic somewhere here in 600 AD and enter, and I would highly recommend you have Magus in your party because there's some interesting dialogue between all the characters. Sadly, like a lot of the side quests in this game, honestly, Magus is not really the best choice for this as far as abilities. Like, other characters would be far more suited to this. In fact, it's like some really hard-hitting single target damage would be way better for this, and that's actually literally the only thing that Magus doesn't have, so it just feels silly that we just don't have the right abilities for this, but I do feel like it's worth having him in your party just for all the dialogue. Alright, so up ahead we have several bosses. Now, the first two don't really matter, you can just do whatever because they're super easy, but meanwhile, the third boss is a little bit trickier, and what you want for that is fire resistance. So, what I'd recommend you do is put the red plate on whoever has the lowest magic resistance, so you can absorb that and heal instead, put the red vest on whoever has the second most magic defense, and then meanwhile put the ruby armor on whoever has the highest magic defense of the people currently in your party. Now, as a quick reminder, the ruby armor is an item that you can get from the trading post in 65 million BC at this point in the game, and it's part of Ayla's whole side quest. Kind of the only other piece of equipment that would be super nice for this is the Dark Helm, because there is some attacks that do shadow damage, so if you wear that, then you can reduce shadow damage on one of your characters by 50%. One other thing I did is I put the barrier/wall ring on Magus, and the reason for this is because the primary damage we're going to be worrying about is fire, so I put, fire absorption items on Frog and Robo, which means they're basically going to be healed the entire time, so they're going to be fine. So even if they get hit with shadow, it doesn't really matter, because the fire attacks will heal them. Meanwhile, with Magus, he's going to be taking damage from everything, although that is significantly reduced. With the Dark Helm, it reduces it. I'm not entirely sure how it calculates it, if it just switches it to 50% reduction, or if it's in addition to the 20% passive reduction that he already has, so it makes it 70%. I'm not entirely sure how they decide how that works, how it calculates it. But anyways, because Magus is taking damage from everything, I gave him the barrier ring, which increases his magical defense. Magus actually has the highest magical defense of all the characters anyway, so it's not really that big a deal, but now he'll take even less damage from everything. Anyways, the first boss battle is going to be Diva Flea, otherwise called Flea Plus in older versions of the game. Now, this character actually, even though it has a fire attack, is the only thing it can do right now. So even though it's fire, though, it is actually physical in nature. I'm not even really sure why it has a fire graphic if it's physical, but high armor is the thing that's going to reduce the damage you take from this, but it's not a big deal, so just go ahead and smack him, because he only has 2,500 life. You'll honestly defeat this guy really fast. In fact, some of your attacks, some of your dual attacks, could potentially do that much damage in one hit anyways, so this boss is a total joke. And as I've mentioned repeatedly throughout the walkthrough, is every single boss battle in this entire game is unique. There's no boss battles that are the exact same. Some of the mechanics changed quite a bit. So like these two battles with Flea and Slash are completely different than they were before, and this upcoming battle with all three of them together is very unique as well. It doesn't follow the same rules that it did for previous battles that we fought with them. I understand that Ozzie is like a joke character, that's his entire purpose, but I still just find it weird that any of the enemies follow him at all. Like, I feel like both, well, I don't know, not necessarily Flea, I suppose. Flea is just eccentric and wants to do his own thing, but Slash, I suppose, is like the straight man, and he's like really, I don't know, a little bit more ruthless, it almost feels like, I suppose, and I just sort of wonder why he isn't the guy in command. It's kind of interesting because I feel like Magus, it makes sense why, if Magus showed up and he was super powerful and he's like, do this, why they'd all just do what he says. Not just because they're afraid, but also just because he's just so confident, you know? He's just so, I don't even know, you know what I mean? Like, A lot of his personality traits are things that the fiends would respect and stuff, so it makes sense that they would follow Magus. But as far as Ozzie, I don't really understand why he's even in charge. It just feels like everybody would just take one look at him and then just dismiss him, but they all go along with him, which I don't really understand. I guess part of what I'm trying to say is I feel like it makes total sense that Ozzie follows Magus, but I don't understand why everybody else follows Ozzie. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because I feel almost like Flea and Slash are equals as far... Well, maybe not even that. Like, Ozzie is weaker than they are, I think. That's part of the whole deal. Like, he's running away like, sure, take care of it. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, Ozzie just can't do anything. I don't understand why he's the leader. He's always coming up with kooky plans, but honestly, he doesn't have any power himself. He always relies on tricks, both as far as mechanics outside of combat, but also in combat. He's like, counters is the only thing he can do. He doesn't have any attacks on his own, which in and of itself is kind of interesting. Again, I've talked about this before throughout the walkthrough, but I think it's really cool how the mechanics and the character design often reflect the lore. So like, the way Magus's whole design is all about that he doesn't play nice with others, and all of his abilities reflect that. And so similarly, Ozzie is a joke character, and like, all his abilities are jokes too. Or maybe even not necessarily a joke, maybe I shouldn't phrase it that way. It's more like he's using other people's attacks against them, and it's all about tricks. It's all about manipulating people, is the only things that he does. But he's nowhere near as like cool as like Flea is. Like, Flea is all about chaos and has all these abilities that reflect that theme. And then meanwhile, Ozzie, like, all he has is just like manipulating people and using their intelligence against them, tricking them is like all he does. Now in this next area, he totally tries to taunt you into walking into this guillotine to get this chest, and you just want to ignore it and continue onwards, and you'll have this humorous scene in which he ends up destroying one of his minions. So after he runs away, you can go ahead and grab the contents of the chest, but before you leave, there is actually a secret that is in this room. Now if you're playing on the DS remake, you can actually see it on the bottom screen. There is totally a hidden room here in the bottom right corner, but you want to just run through this little hidden passage where you'll find a tab and as well as 3 chests. So go ahead and grab those, and these are all upgrades for Magus, which is super nice. You should totally put these on before we go into the next room and confront this boss battle. So speaking of boss battles, I did just kill Super Slash a little bit ago. Again, it's basically the exact same thing as Diva Flea that we fought as well. He's just only does physical damage, and so you just wear a bunch of high armor gear. That's all you really need to know. He only has 2,500 life as well. It's just super easy. This next battle up ahead, though, we're going to fight all 3 of them at the same time. This one is a little bit trickier, so I will talk about that. Again, like I was saying, though, what you want for this particular fight is you want to have just a whole bunch of fire resistance is what you want. Alright, so this upcoming battle has a whole ton of stuff that you can charm off of them, so I highly recommend that you bring Ayla with you. There's various character combinations you can use with this that are pretty good. I'm going to have Magus just so I can have the dialogue and stuff like that, but I'm going to swap back and forth so that I have Ayla here and give her some fire absorption so that she heals from the fire attacks. Something to know about this boss battle is that basically it's just a whole bunch of counters, and there's a couple different kinds that we need to deal with, and if you are attacking them with the appropriate character and you use the appropriate dual techs, you can guarantee that you not only not take damage, but it actually heals you instead. Something interesting to know about counters is that, especially single target counters, is they will prioritize a particular character per tech. So, for example, let's say we're using Fire Sword or whatever against them. Then what'll happen is that the counter will always hit Chrono or whatever. I'm just making that up at the moment. I don't know which character it is. Probably Chrono. So if it hits Chrono every single time, if you know what element it is, if you put the appropriate plate or vest on that character, then it will heal you instead. Does that make sense? Because if it always does fire damage, you just have fire absorption armor on that character, and then you can hit them with whatever you want, doesn't matter, regular attack, anything, and you're actually using that to heal. So not only are you doing damage, but you're just doing it every once in a while. So if they're using shadow damage or whatever, you can just switch to hitting them with regular stuff instead to guarantee that you heal yourself and you're doing damage at the same time. Now that all makes sense. The reason I'm explaining all that is to say that it works the exact same way with dual techs, because if you use a dual tech on it, what'll happen is that particular counter for that particular tech will always prioritize the same character for whichever dual tech it is. So again, in the example of Fire Sword, let's say for example that the counter will always hit Chrono. So if you put the fire absorption plate on Chrono and you use a dual tech with him to cause the counter, you'll do more total damage than if you just attacked them with a single tech or Chrono's regular attack. Okay, so with that explanation out of the way, real quick, it's time to go ahead and start killing the guys. Now, the first thing to know about this boss is that actually they just have a whole ton of triple techs is what they do. They just use triple techs over and over and over again. And so, in order for the triple tech to work, you need all 3 of the enemies to be alive. So as soon as you kill one of them, then all of a sudden they don't have any counters at all. Another thing to know is that if you defeat Slash first, then what'll happen is that Flea will actually run away and you won't get any XP for him at all. So Flea will flee. Ha ha ha. I'm assuming that's a pun. So anyways, what you want to do is kill Flea first. And also, then like I said, because it's a triple tech, then that will then stop all the counters. So now you can attack with whatever you want. It doesn't matter. At this point, by the way, I do have a really good dual tech between Ayla and Robo, which is Beast Toss. This is a combination of Boulder Toss and Uzi Punch, otherwise known as Rapid Fire Fist, but it's a really good ability between the two of them. It does very good boss damage. Typically, the bigger the enemy is, then the more damage it does too, by the way. But it's a really good straight-up physical damage attack. So once the other two are defeated, you can go ahead and focus on Ozzie, and so this is the point when I finally charm him, because if I charm him earlier than this, what will happen is he'll use that triple tech counter. Now his is actually Shadow, and it hits the whole party, so it hits really hard, and it's just awful to deal with. So I just avoid Ozzie entirely until the other two are defeated. So that all being said, my order of events is charm Flea, kill Flea, then charm Slash, kill Slash, then finally charm Ozzie, and then just use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Ozzie actually doesn't have any other attacks. The only attack he has is his triple attack, which is also a counter. So as long as you go ahead and take out one of the characters first, Ozzie literally can't do anything. I do think it's worth it to charm these guys. Slasher 2 is pretty bad, but Ozzie's pants can potentially be pretty good. That's actually a headpiece, even though they're his pants, which is weird. They are unique though, just so you know, when you go into New Game Plus, Ozzie's pants will disappear. Now, in my opinion, of these different items, the one that's the most useful is going to be Flea's Bustier, otherwise known as Flea's Vest, and that is the highest magic defense accessory that you can get in the entire game, so it's very nice for that. However, it is kind of funny to me that, so it's what you get off of Flea, and he's just eccentric and wears girl clothes and stuff like that. But it's funny to me we have this item and we can wear it on any of our characters too, even though there's guys. Some of the best characters to put them on, by the way, are the characters with the lowest magic defense. So in particular, Ayla and Robo. And I don't know why, it just strikes me as really funny that Robo can wear this. That just does not work. I don't know. He does not have the right body shape for that at all. Now, alternative strategy for this fight is you can just kill Ozzie directly, because as soon as he's dead, then the whole battle is won. I do think it's a lot easier to take out the guys individually, but if you want to, you can finish this off by just focusing on Ozzie. Now, in order to pull this off, the thing to realize is that Ozzie's counterattack is a triple tech that will hit your entire party, and it does shadow damage. So if you're going to go for this method instead, then instead of using fire resistance and fire absorption, you want to go for straight up just shadow. So use the black plate, the black vest, and then just use high magic defense on your last character. So in this case, I have the barrier ring on Luca, and she has pretty high magic defense anyways, because all the two girls do. So if I have either one of those two for that one, what I'm doing is I'm using a dual tech between her and Ayla to do a lot of single target damage to Ozzie, and then meanwhile Frog is just using Star Heal, or have Robo use Heal Beam to heal the whole party to deal with Ozzie's counter. So this is a way you can take care of this battle too, and like as you've seen, Flame Kick does really good damage to single target. Ozzie doesn't even have that much health to begin with, so this method works pretty good. You can do the same thing by swapping out characters back and forth. So in this example, I'm using Chrono and Marl instead, but same thing. So I have the Shadow Vest, I think, on Chrono, and then I have the just some high magic defense. So I have the barrier / wall ring on Marl to increase the resistance she has to damage. And then meanwhile, I'm relying on Frog for healing. By the way, whenever you do this, whenever you're trying to use either Robo or Frog in particular as a healer, you want to give them as much magic as possible. So I have like a magic ring on Frog, and I also have the Rune Blade equipped, because that gives him +4 to magic. Even though I have the Masamune right now and it's upgraded super great, and it's his highest damage item, I'm not fighting with him for this particular fight, so increasing his magic as much as possible will increase the healing that he can do. I feel like a lot of people underestimate how powerful Star Heal is. It can be really good, but you kind of have to give Frog a little bit of magic to make it worthwhile. One other thing you could do with this kind of team composition is you could haste all of your people as well. It doesn't really matter too much for this fight. I feel like the most important person to do it to at that point would be Frog, because he can just use Star Heal more often. Again though, as long as you're not attacking, you're not going to cause the counterattack. The counterattack is really what we're worried about, so as long as you're picking and choosing when you're going to do that, then it doesn't really matter how fast you are. This last strategy is a little bit more extreme, but it is totally doable as well. The idea is to use full screen attacks to hit everybody, and this is a little risky because that means we're guaranteeing we're going to have all 3 counters go off at the same time. So at first glance, that seems really, really dumb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the black plate on my healer, which in this case is Frog, and then I'm going to put on Guardian Helms to reduce physical damage, because both Flea and Slash do physical damage with all their regular attacks. Actually, only Flea's counterattack is actually fire. Even though the other attack looks totally fire-based, it's actually a physical type, so if you put on Guardian Helms, you can reduce the damage you take from that. Otherwise, a Haste Helm would be really good on Frog as well, so he can heal more often. that's all good. And then as far as your other characters, just have fire resistance because I'm going to be using dual techs. Whatever your other 2 slots are going to be, use a dual tech that hits the whole screen. Whatever one you have that hits really hard. So in this example, I'm going to be using Anti-Toad Bomb 3, which hits the whole screen really, really hard. Slash and Flea only have 4,000 life, so as long as I'm doing like over 2,000 with whatever dual tech I'm using, then I'm guaranteeing they're going to die after 2 hits anyway. So what that means is I only have 1 counter from each of them to deal with, which is not much. So if I just use this ability a couple times, I'm guaranteeing going to kill them. So, like I was explaining, because I have the black plate on Frog, then what this means is that when they use the full party attack, the full party counter, then Frog actually gets healed. Then meanwhile, they're going to go ahead and use their fire counters on the character that's responsible for that particular tech. So in this case, it prioritizes Luca. I'm assuming it's because it's the higher MP cost. I haven't actually bothered to do like a big old list. I debated about that, like making a chart and seeing which techs prioritize which characters for counters, but it's kind of like, it's such an obscure mechanic and you don't really have to deal with it most of the time, so it feels like a huge waste of my time to be doing that for you guys. But anyways, you get the idea. So in this case, they are prioritizing counterattacking Luca with that single target counter. I do actually have Tabin's suit on her, which means that it reduces fire damage, but it doesn't remove it entirely. But I have it on her because it also increases her speed, and I wanted her to be really fast for this fight, as opposed to having the red plate on her, is what I'm explaining. But yeah, as you can see, this strategy totally destroyed them. So basically, for this fight, the only person that actually technically needs some resistance is just Luca, because she's the one getting hit with all 3 of the counters. So as long as she has enough magic defense, or she's just resistant to fire, so either any of Luca's gear, or the red plate, or the red vest, if she has any one of those 3, then you just win for this particular combo, for example. So for this last example, I just don't have any good gear on any of my characters at all, and I'm showing the fact that you can use this kind of suicidal strategy to force counters, but I'm going to be totally fine. So what I'm doing is I'm using Luca and Ayla to do damage with, so they're my dual tech characters. Meanwhile, I have Robos completely dedicated to full screen heals, is what I'm doing. Now, in Luca's case, like, this is all magic damage, and she has the most magic defense. I don't think I have Tabin's suit on her or anything. I just have, like, I think I took it off. I just had something regular, like a platinum vest or whatever it is, platinum armor, in order to just show the fact that, so like, she's taking, because I have high physical armor, she's not taking very much damage from Flea and Slash's regular attacks. And then meanwhile, Robo can easily heal them all, but you'll notice, like, this Inferno dual tech just does so much damage to these guys, so I'm totally going to wipe them out really easily. Again, once these 2 guys are defeated, then you don't have a counterattack to deal with at all. Anyway, you get the idea. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this battle, but it's actually pretty easy. Like, at first glance, it seems like it could potentially be pretty rough, but it's not bad. Part of the reason for that, though, too, is just we're so strong. If we were way lower level, this might be kind of rough. Now, once you've defeated him, go ahead and grab the nearby contents of the chest, and then you can join him in the next room. But yeah, I'd recommend that you bring Ayla for that fight so you can charm the stuff. In particular, I think the Flea's bustier is overall the best item. Ozzie's pants is very strange. What that does is it's a headpiece that you put on that has the highest physical defense in the game, which is really cool, but then it also guarantees to apply the Chaos debuff as well as HP down. What that means is HP down basically makes you poisoned, and then meanwhile, the other effect means that you're always going to have Chaos debuff as soon as you start, so you're always confused. However, you cannot counteract that with any other items, like, if you wear the Nova armor, you'd have status immunity, and also if you wear Shala's amulet, you'd have status immunity, but that doesn't apply in this particular case. So even if you have status immunity from one of your other items, it doesn't matter. The headpiece will guarantee you always start with Chaos, which is really annoying. So you have to take care of it by using like a Panacea / heal at the beginning of combat every single time for whoever you put that armor piece on. So I don't really feel like it's super worth it overall. It is interesting, it's unique, so that's part of why I like to charm it. But whatever you want to do. It's not like this fight's very hard anyway. In the next room, we have another fight with Ozzie by himself. It's very similar to the fight we had with him when he was in Magus's castle. So what you have to do is hit these switches that are in the background in order to continue on with the fight. However, what it does is it makes a trapdoor appear next to you, and you will then fall down to the previous rooms. Go confront him again. This time a cat will come by for some reason and hit the appropriate switch, which then causes Ozzie to fall down into a pit instead. One thing I think is interesting about this team composition that I have in general is just the fact that here I am doing Magus's quest, and I brought Magus for Frog's quest, and then I also brought Frog for Magus's quest. It's like, again, they're arch rivals, and it's like, I don't know, I find it kind of funny. I suppose it literally makes it a little more apparent apparent when Ozzie's like, you know, you're with the enemy kind of thing, and it's like, can't really argue with that when he's traveling with Frog now. So after all that, if you go back to Medina Village in 1000 AD, you'll see that history has changed. And I think this only takes place if you actually make Ozzie fall down the pit. I think if you actually just get all the goodies and you defeat the trio and then you leave, then everything's still evil here. But if you make him fall down the pit at the very end of Ozzie's fort, then that changes things here in Medina. So all of the fiends are no longer worshipping an Ozzie statue here at all, and so they're all just happy. In fact, they're all quite very friendly. The only thing that's still weird is they are still worshipping the Black Omen. But other than that, they're not like evil anymore. In fact, you can go to the market and now it has the cheapest prices of everything in the entire game. The tier of everything here, though, is the same as it was when we were in the Magic Kingdom, though, and so we've already out-leveled that, so we're past it. So nothing here is, like, all that great. They do have the Zanmoto here, but that's not a very good weapon anyways for Chrono, so it's just kind of like, nothing here is any good. I suppose the only things that are worthwhile is just the regular consumables, which would be, like, high potions, Athenian waters, slash revives, and then also, like, some of the panacea slash heals would be kind of nice. But other than that, nothing else really matters, I suppose. So similarly, if you go to some of the other buildings, you'll see that the fiends are quite happy regarding humans. In fact, there is even some humans that are here in Medina Village, and they're all just happy and everything's great. In fact, you can sleep at their inn for a cheap price as well. So I guess the moral of the story, what this story is trying to teach us, is that if you want to stop racial prejudices once and for all you have to do is go back in time and stop the opposing faction's leader by beating him up with lots and lots of violence. Works every time, am I right? Wow, that did not send the message I was expecting it to. I'm not really sure if this is the best thing we should use as an example. So funnily enough, here in Medina Village, the mayor has now changed, and there's humans actually that are on staff here too. And then meanwhile, Ozzie's descendant is now the worker bee, who is like the one being ordered around. So instead of him ordering everybody else around, now he's the one doing all the chores, which is kind of fun. I sort of wonder how much control Magus really had. I sort of think that he just like was using the fiends for their resources and then just kind of let them run wild and do whatever they want, which would kind of explain a lot because Ozzie, you know, the war didn't really change when Ozzie was in control. Everything was kind of the same. But I sort of find this side quest interesting because it's kind of like Magus redeeming, like instead of just throwing the whole world under the bus and just like doing whatever he wants, it's kind of like he's fixing history a little bit and redeeming himself, and I think that's cool. But yeah, that's the end of Magus' side quest. If you guys enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. As always, stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.